2:38 a.m. Black Sea. The Romanian frigate RFS Regina Maria was 47 nautical miles southeast of Constanta, conducting a scheduled NATO maritime patrol in the northwestern Black Sea corridor. The Meko-class vessel had been on patrol for 6 days as part of the standing NATO Maritime Group 2 rotation, the Alliance's permanent Black Sea naval presence, which had been operating at elevated readiness since the beginning of the regional tension cycle 14 months earlier. Its crew of 203 had processed 6 suspected submarine contacts and tracked 41 surface vessels in 6 days. At 2:38 a.m., the watch was quiet. The radar picture was clean. The sea state was 2. At 2:38 and 9 seconds a.m., 2 Kalibr land attack cruise missiles fired from a submerged Russian Kilo-class submarine 180 kilometers to the east completed their terminal approach phase and impacted the Regina Maria within 3.1 seconds of each other. The first struck the forward VLS magazine. The second struck the bridge superstructure. The vessel's Aegis-compatible CMS had tracked neither inbound contact. The Kalibr's sea-skimming terminal profile, final approach at 15 meters above the water surface, subsonic speed, reduced radar cross-section, had remained below the Regina Maria's surface search radar's detection horizon for the entirety of its approach over calm water. The radar horizon at 15 meters altitude for a surface-mounted radar at frigate mast height was approximately 14 kilometers. At subsonic approach speed, 14 kilometers represented less than 60 seconds of potential detection time. The Regina Maria's radar had detected neither missile before impact. At 2:38 and 9 seconds a.m., the Romanian frigate ceased to be a functioning naval vessel. The forward magazine detonation produced a structural failure across the bow section. The bridge strike rendered the command and control space non-functional within seconds. Of 203 crew, 67 survived the initial impacts in the aft section, the engineering spaces and the below waterline compartments that the hull's structural integrity momentarily protected. The vessel began taking on water through the forward hull breach at a rate that damage control assessments would later calculate as non-survivable within approximately 22 minutes, without emergency buoyancy measures. The surviving crew initiated emergency procedures. The first distress signal was transmitted at 2:38:51 a.m., 42 seconds after impact. The distress signal reached NATO Maritime Command at Northwood at 2:39 and 4 seconds a.m. and simultaneously activated the Article 5 response protocol for the Black Sea region that had been established at the 2024 NATO summit and formalized in classified operational annexes 3 months later. Romania was a NATO member. An attack on a Romanian naval vessel in international waters was an attack on the alliance. The protocol's language was unambiguous. The operational response it required was not. The Black Sea is a closed sea. Its only connection to the Mediterranean is through the Turkish Straits, the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles, which are governed by the 1936 Montreux Convention. The convention gives Turkey sovereign authority over the passage of naval vessels through the straits and includes specific provisions limiting the transit of non-Black Sea state naval vessels during wartime or periods of hostility. Turkey had invoked the convention's wartime provisions in February 2022 and had maintained that invocation continuously since. No additional NATO naval vessels from non-Black Sea states had entered the Black Sea since that date. The standing NATO Maritime Group 2, which operated in the Black Sea under pre-existing transit rights established before Turkey's wartime invocation, could not be reinforced by vessel from outside the region without Turkish consent. At 2:39:04 a.m., the Alliance's Article 5 response capability in the Black Sea consisted of what was already there. What was already there was not nothing. The Romanian Navy had 2 additional frigates at Constanta, NMS Regal Ferdinand and NMS Marasesti. The Bulgarian Navy had 4 corvettes at Varna. The Turkish Navy, a NATO member with substantial Black Sea naval capacity, had 2 frigates at Sinop and a destroyer at Samson, and USS Donald Cook, the U.S. Navy's forward-deployed Arleigh Burke-class destroyer that had been transiting the Aegean toward a scheduled port call at Constanta, was currently 340 kilometers from the Bosphorus, 21 hours of transit from the Black Sea at 20 knots, assuming Turkish authorization for Montreux passage was granted, 21 hours. The Regina Maria had 22 minutes of residual buoyancy. The Regina Maria's loss carried a weight beyond the tactical. NATO Article 5, the collective defense clause that had been the alliance's foundational guarantee since 1949, had never been invoked for a maritime kinetic event in which an alliance member's naval vessel was the target. It had been invoked once before in response to an attack on alliance territory, and its invocation had produced a collective military response that took weeks to build and months to develop into operational effect. The invocation in the early hours of a Tuesday morning in the Black Sea was something different. It was not a question of whether to respond. Article 5 was explicit. It was a question of what response was physically possible within the geographic, legal, and temporal constraints that the Black Sea's unique characteristics imposed. The article's language did not specify how a response had to be delivered. It specified that an attack on one was an attack on all, and that all would respond. What all could do in the Black Sea at 2:41 a.m. was constrained in ways that no NATO planner had fully resolved in any of the 14 tabletop exercises that had addressed the scenario over the preceding 3 years. At 2:41 a.m., NAVSOUTH in Naples transmitted the Article 5 activation to all Black Sea NATO partners simultaneously and initiated the emergency Montreux passage request to the Turkish government. The request had been pre-formatted in a classified diplomatic instrument that both parties had negotiated in 2023 specifically for this contingency, an instrument that established a 90-minute decision timeline for Turkish authorization in the event of an Article 5 activation in the Black Sea region. 90 minutes. The USS Donald Cook would still be in the Aegean when the Turkish decision was due. The immediate response capability had to come from what was present. NMS Regal Ferdinand sailed from Constanta at 2:52 a.m., 14 minutes after the distress signal, the minimum time required to bring her crew from shore leave status to underway. Her mission was rescue, not response. 67 survivors in the water or aboard a sinking vessel 47 nautical miles southeast. Transit time at flank speed, 68 minutes. The vessel was moving toward a search and rescue operation in a sea where the submarine that had just engaged its sister ship was still operating. At 2:44 a.m., NAVSOUTH's Operations Center had assembled the intelligence picture that the next decision required. The Kilo-class submarine responsible for the engagement had been tracked intermittently by the NATO persistent surveillance architecture in the Black Sea, a network of acoustic sensors P-8A patrol aircraft and allied submarine assets that had been maintaining a degraded but functional tracking picture of Russian submarine activity in the western Black Sea sector. The tracking picture placed the Kilo at a position 180 kilometers east of the Regina Maria at the time of launch, a position consistent with the Kalibr's assessed range and the timeline of the attack. The submarine's post-launch track was unknown. It had gone deep and changed course within 90 seconds of the launch, which was standard Kilo procedure after a Kalibr engagement. The tracking had been lost at 2:38:47 a.m. The submarine was somewhere in a search area of approximately 14,000 square kilometers. NATO had 2 P-8A maritime patrol aircraft within range, one operating from Constanta and one transiting from Sigonella, Italy. The Constanta aircraft could be on station over the search area in 28 minutes. The Sigonella aircraft in 94 minutes. Neither would be effective against a Kilo operating at depth under the Black Sea's particular thermal layer conditions without significantly more time and assets than were currently available. The Kilo was the immediate tactical problem. The Article 5 political response was the immediate strategic one. The two problems were not the same problem, and the response architecture had to address both simultaneously. At 2:47 a.m., the Aegis Ashore facility at Devaselu, Romania, the NATO ballistic missile defense installation whose SM-3 interceptors were designed for ballistic threats but whose system also integrated with the broader NATO air and missile defense network, transmitted an updated air picture to NAVSOUTH showing 17 Russian Air Force aircraft that had activated and departed from 3 separate Black Sea region bases in the 6 minutes since the Regina Maria engagement. Su-34 strike aircraft from Krasnodar, Su-27 fighters from Belbek in Crimea, and a Tu-22 M3 backfire bomber from Mozdok, Georgia. Not an immediate offensive formation, an intimidation deployment, a demonstration that the Russian Air Force was in motion and that any NATO surface vessel operating in the Black Sea was within range of what was now airborne. The demonstration was calculated. It was designed to influence the Turkish government's decision on the Montreux Passage request, the EA-18G Growler detachment at Mihail Kogalniceanu Air Base in Romania. 2 aircraft from a temporary NATO electronic warfare deployment established 6 weeks earlier during a multinational exercise that had quietly not ended when the exercise concluded, was airborne at 2:49 a.m., not over the Black Sea, over Romanian airspace where they could begin building a jamming architecture against the Russian radar network that was now providing targeting data to the aircraft overflying the Black Sea's western approaches. The Growlers could not engage the Russian aircraft. They could degrade the data links that connected those aircraft to their ground-based targeting systems. At 2:51 a.m., the F-16 alert package at Fătăști Air Base in Romania was airborne. 4 aircraft, fully loaded, establishing a combat air patrol in Romanian airspace over the Danube Delta. The airspace was unambiguously Romanian. The aircraft were unambiguously defensive. The message they sent was unambiguous. The Romanian Air Force was active, armed, and watching. It was not an offensive posture. It was a presence that the Russian aircraft overflying the Black Sea's western approaches would have to account for in their own decision calculus. The Aegis Ashore battery at Devaselu tracked the Tu-22 M3 backfire from first activation at 2:43 a.m. The Tu-22 M3 is a supersonic strike aircraft with a combat radius of approximately 2,400 kilometers, capable of carrying Ka-22 anti-ship missiles with a range exceeding 600 kilometers. From its current position over the eastern Black Sea, the Tu-22 M3 could engage any surface vessel in the Black Sea without approaching within range of the Romanian F-16s. The Aegis Ashore's SM-3 interceptors were designed for ballistic missiles, not maneuvering aircraft. Against the Tu-22 M3, the battery's contribution was awareness, not engagement. What it provided was a continuous track that was transmitted in real time to every NATO command node monitoring the situation and to the Turkish military liaison office in Ankara that was currently processing the Montreux Passage request. At 3:04 a.m., the Turkish chief of the naval staff transmitted an interim response to NAVSOUTH through the emergency liaison channel. The response did not authorize Montreux Passage. It committed to a decision by the 90-minute deadline established in the 2023 instrument, which placed the decision at 4:09 a.m., 91 minutes after the Article 5 activation. The interim response also transmitted a separate piece of information. The Turkish Navy's destroyer at Samsun and one of the 2 frigates at Sinop had been directed to sea at 2:55 a.m. on a heading toward the center of the Black Sea. Turkey was not authorizing external reinforcement. Turkey was responding with its own assets. Assets that were already in the Black Sea, required no Montreux authorization, and carried sufficient anti-submarine warfare capability to begin searching the 14,000 square kilometer area where the Kilo was hiding. The political calculation behind that movement was precise and had been made in under 17 minutes. Turkey was a NATO member. An attack on a Romanian NATO vessel was an attack on the alliance of which Turkey was a founding member. Turkey would not authorize foreign warships through the Bosphorus during an active hostility period. The Montreux Convention was sovereign authority that Turkey had exercised consistently for 3 years and would not yield. But Turkey would respond with its own naval force under its own authority to a situation that threatened alliance cohesion. In a sea where Turkey's interests were directly implicated, the Turkish Navy's movement to the Black Sea Center was not charity to Romania. It was Turkey protecting its own equities in a situation where standing aside entirely would have consequences more damaging than the tactical exposure of operating in a contested environment. The Turkish naval response had not been obvious or automatic. Within the Turkish National Security Council, the 17 minutes between the Article 5 activation and the decision to send the Samson destroyer to sea had involved a genuine debate between two positions. One position held that Turkey's Montreux invocation was non-negotiable sovereign authority that could not be yielded to collective defense pressure without creating a precedent that would permanently compromise Turkey's control of the Straits. Control that was not merely a legal artifact but a strategic asset that shaped Turkey's entire regional posture. The other position held that an alliance member's warship had just been engaged by Russian missile fire 47 nautical miles from a NATO base, and that standing entirely aside was not a sustainable political position regardless of what the Straits' legal status required. The resolution of the debate produced the decision that had been transmitted to NAVSOUTH at 3:04 a.m. Turkey would not authorize external reinforcement. Turkey would deploy its own assets. The distinction was legally significant and strategically calculated. Turkey was not yielding its Montreux authority. It was exercising its own sovereign decision to respond to an event that had occurred in a sea that Turkey's own national interests required to remain governed by rules rather than by force. At 3:07 a.m., the Turkish TF-2000 destroyer left Samson at flank speed. Its AN/SQS-53C hull-mounted sonar and 2 embarked SH-70B helicopters gave it the most capable anti-submarine warfare package currently operating in the Black Sea. Its commanding officer had received orders to prosecute the submarine contact to the extent possible under the rules of engagement. Rules that authorized engagement of a submarine that had conducted a confirmed kinetic act against a NATO vessel. The Kilo had conducted that act. The authorization was active. The Romanian P-8A reached the search area at 3:12 a.m. and began deploying sonobuoys in a pattern designed to box the Kilo's probable movement corridor based on the last known position and the 2 hours of elapsed time. The acoustic picture was difficult. The Black Sea's particular salinity and temperature structure, it is one of the most stratified bodies of water on Earth, with a permanent halocline at approximately 100 meters that creates strong acoustic refraction effects, meant that the sonobuoy's effectiveness was reduced compared to open ocean operations. The Kilo was specifically designed and operated to take advantage of exactly this acoustic environment. Its Kilo-class designation reflected decades of Soviet and Russian engineering optimized for the closed seas where their submarines operated. The acoustic environment that the Romanian P-8A and the Turkish helicopter were working in was among the most challenging in any body of water where NATO anti-submarine assets regularly operated. The Black Sea is effectively a two-layer ocean. Its upper layer, to approximately 100 meters depth, is relatively low salinity water fed by major river systems including the Danube, Dnieper, and Don. Below the halocline at 100 meters, the water transitions to high salinity, anoxic water that has been isolated from surface exchange for thousands of years. The boundary between these layers creates a powerful acoustic refraction gradient that bends sound waves, creates shadow zones, and produces false contact readings that can occupy sonar operators for hours. Soviet naval architects had understood this environment when they designed the Kilo class in the 1970s. The Kilo's diving depth was calibrated to exploit the halocline, operating just above or just below the layer boundary depending on the tactical requirement. using the acoustic refraction to mask its own signature while still maintaining a degree of sonar awareness of the threat above. The Black Sea was the submarine's home environment in a way that the open ocean was not. Every advantage the acoustic environment could offer had been designed into the vessel's operational doctrine over decades. The P-8A and the Turkish helicopter were not operating in their optimal acoustic environment. They were operating in the kilos. At 3:31 a.m., the Turkish SH-70B helicopter operating 340 kilometers east of Constanta registered an acoustic contact at buoy position Kilo 7. The contact was assessed as probable submarine, bearing consistent with a vessel moving northwest at approximately 8 knots. The assessment was transmitted to the Turkish destroyer and to the Romanian P-8A. Both assets converged on the contact over the following 23 minutes while maintaining the acoustic tracking. Contact classification upgraded to confirmed submarine at 3:49 a.m. based on blade rate analysis consistent with a Kilo-class propulsion signature. The Turkish destroyer had arrived within torpedo range at 3:47 a.m. and was holding position while the classification process completed. At 3:44 a.m., the Turkish destroyer's commanding officer authorized engagement. 2 Mk-46 torpedoes entered the water at 3:51 a.m. The Kilo detected the launch transients at 3:58 a.m. and executed an emergency dive and speed change. The acoustic contact was lost briefly at 3:14 a.m. when the Kilo crossed the halocline's refraction layer. Both torpedoes executed search patterns. The first reacquired at 3:31 a.m. Impact assessed at 3:44 a.m. The Kilo's subsequent acoustic signature was consistent with a non-operational hull. NMS Regal Ferdinand reached the Regina Maria's last known position at 3:41 a.m., passing through debris and fuel oil before locating the first survival raft at 3:44 a.m. All 67 survivors were recovered by 4:19 a.m. The Regina Maria sank at 4:02 a.m. in 78 meters of water. At 4:09 a.m., Turkey transmitted its Montreux decision to NAVSOUTH. The Turkish government did not authorize passage for non-Black Sea NATO naval vessels. The Montreux Convention invocation remained in force. The decision was delivered with a diplomatic note that acknowledged the Article 5 obligation, expressed Turkey's condemnation of the attack on the Regina Maria, and stated that the Turkish Navy's prosecution of the responsible submarine, which was the subject of a separate press release issued simultaneously by the Turkish Ministry of National Defense, constituted Turkey's contribution to the alliance's collective response within the constraints of its sovereign obligations under the 1936 Convention. The press release was not coordinated with NAVSOUTH before transmission. It was the first public confirmation that the Kilo had been engaged. Time from Regina Maria impact to first distress signal, 42 seconds. Time from distress signal to Article 5 activation, 23 seconds. Time from activation to Turkish naval assets underway, 12 minutes. Time from activation to Romanian P-8A on station, 34 minutes. Time from activation to Kilo contact classification, 71 minutes. Time from classification to Turkish torpedo engagement, 7 seconds. Romanian survivors recovered, 67 of 203. Regina Maria sank, 84 minutes after impact. Kilo-class submarine assessed non-operational 72 minutes after Article 5 activation. Turkish Montreux decision, 90-minute deadline, passage denied. USS Donald Cook, still in the Aegean at time of decision. Black Sea NATO force posture, unchanged by external reinforcement. Two alliances members had lost major naval assets in 72 minutes. One of those assets had been the aggressors. The 1936 Montreux Convention had not been written as a constraint on collective defense. It had been written as a tool of Turkish sovereign authority over a waterway. On the night of the Regina Maria, it had functioned as both simultaneously, limiting the alliance's ability to reinforce the Black Sea theater while simultaneously giving Turkey the framework within which it could act autonomously in ways that produced the same operational outcome that reinforcement would have provided, without requiring Turkey to yield its sovereign authority to do so. Two different legal instruments. One result. The Kilo was on the bottom of the Black Sea. The legal question of what that meant for the perpetual tension between collective defense obligations and sovereign maritime authority would occupy lawyers in Brussels, Ankara, and Bucharest for considerably longer than the 72 minutes the operational sequence had required.